What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over menu flow. So I've went ahead and added a few new menus as well as ways to get back to other menus once you've surpassed them. So we're going to be going over press any key screen, which is simple enough. We're going to be going over a main menu screen, which just has some options, a background, and some buttons you can press. These buttons don't do anything because this means we're going to be setting up other game modes very, very soon. And that means we're going to be going over AI very, very soon. But for now, I've just made the versus button do what we're used to doing. We'll be setting up different HUDs and different game modes and different things like that we're going to be setting as we click these buttons. But for now, we're going to click versus to go to our versus menu. I can select my options just as usual, change my skins, whatever, and then I can go back. And then I can go back in and all my options are reset. That way they don't stay between menus, which could be bad. It could be annoying, especially if you're trying to reset something you've done. So we're going to have everything reset. We're also going to have the option to go into our stage select screen, have it pop up with its stuff. As you do, we're going to be able to hit back and get rid of the stage select screen, continue, and it's also going to reset. So there you go. This is especially helpful if you're going to have a background on your character select screen, like a lot of fighting games do. You're going to have some fancy background here, and you don't necessarily want the stage selection stuff to stay up once you've gone out of the view of that. But then everything is still as normal. We can select our map and begin the game. So there you go. We'll have some menu flow in here today. And I will actually address an issue with the stage selection screen that I did not catch until this episode, so that'll be good as well. So, go ahead and make some new widgets. If you hit Add New, User Interface, Widget Blueprint. Add 2 more widgets. Add a Press Any Key screen or a Main Menu screen. If you don't want the Press Any Key screen, you can skip it. It's not necessary at all, but a lot of games have this. I just chose a free use image, free for commercial use image that I can put in the background for now, so you guys can see and have something. It's not blank. It'll look a lot better like this, even if it's not going to stay like this. Then I've added a main menu, which has some options with buttons and different paths I can use. And then I've made changes to the character select screen and the level select screen to have back buttons and to set the proper values accordingly. One final note before we get started, I'm only using the mouse for this. There's another reason I'm doing a menu flow this episode. So, we're episode, I believe, 45 of the fighting game tutorial series, which is very far along. And we have gamepad support in the game and for changing the controls, which is good, but we need gamepad support all the way throughout the menus. So I was going to do one on the character select screen, but I didn't want to do that and then make menu flow and then have to go back and do this. So we're setting up our menu flow so we have a basic idea of how our gamepad is going to interact with this and how our player is going to interact with it. So we're going to do this, and then very, very soon in the future, we're going to be going over gamepad support. So if you're looking for that, we'll be getting to that, and it's kind of the reason I'm setting everything up so we can knock it out in one episode. Okay. Once you've made your new widgets, they're pretty simple widgets, so it's not going to take a lot of time for you to make these. Just make 2 of them, like I said, if you want both the press any key and the main menu. Or whoops, the main menu screen. And I'll show you how I've made them. So specifically for press any key, I've added a background image, which is as simple as it sounds. I've brought an image onto the canvas. I've made it the size of my canvas, which is 1920 by 1080. And I positioned it in the top left corner, just like that. And there you go. I made it a Z order of -1. This one will make -5, so it goes all the way to the back. But the higher the Z order, the later it is rendered, meaning that the highest Z order will be rendered on top. So the lowest Z order gets rendered on the bottom. Since it is the background image, I want it to be rendered in the back. So you can see I have it 1920, 1080, -1, and I've given the brush an image. If it's not open, just hit brush. You can select your image that you want, and I've given it this image, which is also a 1920 by 1080 image anyway. But this is just my background image. I've then added just default text, literally just bring text onto the screen. I've made it size to content because I don't really care about positioning on this, since I'm only going to have the title and then the press any key text on the screen. So I've just positioned it where I liked what it looked like. It comes out to basically in the center of the screen. It's probably a little bit off, but good enough for now. Made it the size I want. And then I've made, if you scroll down to appearance, you can change the font. So I don't have a different font that I'm changing to, but I did change the size from 24 to 48. And I made the outline size 2. So I haven't changed the colors. The default color is white and the default outline is black. But by giving the outline size, you can see white text with this nice black outline, which makes it look pretty cool. And then same with the press any key text. You can't see it right now because I've actually applied an animation to it that lets it kind of blink. So it keeps the player a little bit engaged and things like that. I had the outline sizes 2. The size is 48 for that. And the text is press any key. So the same as this guy. Okay, now to apply an animation, like you can see in here, just kind of fading in and out like this, so you know to press a key. To do this, all you have to do is, you should have this animations tab in the bottom left. If you don't, you should be able to open it in Window, Animations right here. Hit plus animation to add a new one. It'll ask you to name it. I added mine. Press any key, blink. And then you hit plus track to add what you're going to be changing. So in this case, I wanted to change my press any key text, which is this value right here. All you have to do is make an animation in your sequencer, in your timeline down here. If you're not familiar with how to do that, that's fine. We'll go over it right now, but it's pretty simple. What you need to do is grab a value that you want to be able to change in your animation. For my case, I wanted it to blink. So I want to apply a render opacity change. Basically, how much of it is visible and how much of it is transparent. So simple enough. You hit add track and it'll give you all the options. For mine, I've already used it, but it's render opacity. If you want to use this one, just go ahead and click on this. And then you have your actual timeline here. Well, you can add key events, key times, for you to change things here. So if we go ahead and hit this plus keyframe here, this adds a new keyframe at the current time. I believe you already have one at 0 by default, but for me, I said I wanted the entire animation to last 2 seconds for it to be fading out and then coming back in. And I'm going to have it loop. So you can see over time it fades to about 0.3% of opacity and then comes back up to full. So how I do that is I went a second in. I literally just bring this guy, this little tab thing that determines where you're at on the timeline, to the time I want, 1 second in. I hit add a new keyframe. It'll put a little dot at the timeline we want here. And then you can change the value right here. So I went from 1 to 0.3. So if you guys want to see how I've done this, let's do it with like a shadow effect. We can add a track and play around with it. So let's do something like shadow offset. Now you see I start with a keyframe at 0 seconds in. Let's say I also want to do this at 1 second in. I can hit this button to add a new keyframe. And you can see I have 2 options here. I can change the X and the Y. Let's change the X. Well, let's not make it too crazy. Let's change it to like a 10 and a 10 at this time. Now, as you move it back and forth, you can see the shadow offset changes. See how it goes down because of the shadow? Then we can add another keyframe right here at 2 seconds and set these back to, was it 0, 0 or 1, 1? I can't remember. It was 1, 1. So we should technically make these 1. And now you can see that it'll actually do like a little bob up and down animation. It's that simple. You add a keyframe at the time you want and change the value. Then the timeline here, the animation, will actually determine how to change the value enough in intervals that once you reach this time, it's at the value you want. That way it's a nice, steady flow. So now if we look at this, it looks like that, bobbing up and down. So once you've made your animation, you can make it as simple or as complex as you want. Just go into the graph. In your event construct, we're going to go ahead and find the animation. it'll automatically be in here. You don't have to do anything to get it in here. You can just drag it into the scene, hit get, and then type play animation off of it. You can keep the start time at 0. This is your in animation. Number of loops to play. This is how many times it'll play. If you keep it at 0, or set it to be 0, then it'll loop indefinitely, which is what I want. And you can set the playback speed. Originally, it's at 1. I made it 2 because I thought it looked better. But that's up to you. And then I have actually implemented the functionality for this screen, which is essentially just to make sure if there's any input that happens, we open up the main menu screen widget. So now that we've created the press any keys widget, if you go into your level blueprint, hit blueprints, open level blueprint. In our begin play, we were previously opening the character select widget because that was our main menu to this point. So if you haven't watched the other episodes in the series, that's fine, but if you want to, I will leave a link to the iCard to the very first episode. Again, we're 45 episodes in, so we are quite far. So I've changed it to my press any key screen widget, and I still, of course, add it to viewport. Then if we go back into a press any key screen, again, we have this listen for input action. So literally type listen for input action. This one right here. And I put in this action name, any key menu. Now, we have a few things that are already for any key, but I like to separate them for each option we have, for each different scenario we have. Just in case I want to change the values later, you kind of don't want to piggyback too much off of this. For example, add to input buffer has any key right now for both P1 and P2. But if I decide to change this to the specific keys that player 1 and player 2 can use, which I most likely will do, it will screw this up if I left it that functionality, if I want it to be truly any key. So I went ahead and I've added a new action mapping, edit project settings, input, add a new action mapping, and I've typed in any key menu, and then I've searched for any key, any key, and selected it. Okay? So now I have it as, I have to type in this for the action name, and then you can do something called a callback, which means when this action has been pressed, this action mapping has been pressed or clicked or whatever, then you can do this functionality on callback. So drag off of your callback, add custom event like this, rename it to be whatever you want. I called mine enter main menu. The logic for this is we're going to create the main menu screen widget. Main menu screen is this widget right here, not the main menu level that we're in, but the widget we're going to make. You're going to add it to the viewport, and then you're going to remove from parent self. That's removing from parent the press any key screen, because once we are done with the main menu, we don't ever want to go back to it. And maybe you do after a timer or something like that. So that's up to you if you want to change it. So we're done with our press any key screen. Let's go to our main menu screen. Now, this is simple enough, so I won't really cover everything again, but I'll go over it very quickly. Basically, I've added an image, which is 1920 by 1080, Z order of -1, and I've applied an image that I want. I call it Trail of the Wise icon. I'm actually just using the icon I used during the level select for the map Trail of the Wise. Then I went ahead and added a text, like literally text right here. Called it main menu, placed it at this location if you want the exact screen I have. Size to content, change the size to 50, the outline size to 2. And then I've made 4 buttons. I've actually made 1 button and then copied it 3 other times. But drag a button onto the screen, make it the size that you want. See, I played around with my sizes. Haven't changed anything else with it. And then I've added a text box to my button. To do that, you just drag the text over your button here, and since I already have one, it won't let it accept multiple children. But if you didn't have a child on your button, you could just put text on your button, and it will automatically center it for you and all that. And then the text itself, all I did was change to bold italic, made it size 36, and outline size of 2. No other changes. And then I proceeded to copy this 3 times over and change the names to fit with what they are. So I have story mode button, which has story mode button text with the text story, simple enough. Arcade mode button, which has arcade mode button text with the text arcade. Versus mode button with text versus. and practice mode button with text practice. That's how we get this little effect that we have here. And for all 4 of your buttons, come down here and make sure you hit on pressed with the little plus button here. I've already done it, so it says view for me, but you want to do this for all 4 buttons. On pressed, not on clicked, because on pressed will also work with controllers and hitting the enter key and your other confirm buttons. Then in the graph of this, we're just going to set up the logic to perform each of the actions we want to do when the buttons are pressed. So I have story mode, arcade, versus, and practice. For the 3 that involve AI or some other functionality we don't have yet, I don't have them set up. We do have versus mode set up. So here's what I do. I go ahead and set the main menu visibility to be hidden. So since we're in the widget already, if you just type set visibility, then it'll come up. You can use target itself and just make it hidden. This is because I don't necessarily want to remove the main menu from parent. If your widget doesn't have any sort of persistent data, then you won't need to get rid of any of the choices you've selected, right? So, okay, great, we selected versus, but if I just make this visible again later, then things are good to go. Now, it's very possible, and in fact, we're going to be animating our main menu at some point, or, like the button flies off the screen or something fancy when you select it. It's very possible you might have to reset some of those states just so that if they were to come back, everything looks normal on the main menu. But otherwise, you don't have to reset any of the data here. Like, we're not going to spawn actors in the scene for our characters or something like that. So it doesn't really matter. We can just set it to be invisible, spawn this screen, and then do the logic we want on this screen. So all I do, set the main menu widget to be invisible. Then I create our character select screen widget. It's called character select screen 1 because I moved it and it wouldn't let me rename it. I could just delete the asset and remake it if I want. I'll probably do that, but for now, just know this is our regular character select screen widget. It hasn't changed. I just literally copied it over, and its name, it wouldn't let me change the name. Then I'm going to do something called set main menu widget reference. So what this is we've made a variable in the character select screen that's going to store our main menu widget reference. We're doing this so that when we want to go back to the main menu from the character select screen, we have a way of making the main menu widget visible again. So if you go into your character select screen, let's do 2 things. First of all, add a back button. You can do this the same way I just showed you how to add the buttons for the main menu. So literally add a button to the screen, choose the size that you want, the positioning that you want, make sure you click on pressed for it, and then I've added some text so that it says back. Simple enough. Okay, so we go into our graph. I've made a variable called main menu widget reference. Just click plus, add a new variable, then click the little thing that chooses the type, and let's look for the type of widget that our main menu screen is. So, guess what? It's main menu screen. Get an object reference. Now, we're not going to set it in here. We're going to set it when we spawn it in the main menu, since we have it right there. We don't have to search for it by getting all actors of class or of type or whatever. So all we have to do is drag off of the widget that we created, the character select screen widget. And before you hit add to viewport, you can set variables right off of this return value. So we're going to set our main menu widget reference. We're going to literally type self, get a reference to self, and drag that in. Then you can see I still go below and still add it to my viewport because we still want to be able to see our character select screen first. Simple enough. That's the logic for the main menu. Now, we just need to be able to go back and forth between our character select and our level select and also have the right data between them. So to do that, we don't have to do anything in the construct of the character select because our reference is now already set. But what we do have to do is determine what logic has to be reset when we back out of the character select screen. So we've added the back button, and we hit the little plus to get on pressed back button. So what we have to do is we have to reset the visibility of the main menu widget. We have to reset the values in the character select screen, and we have to remove the character select screen from the parent. So normally, when you remove a widget from a parent, then, okay, you're good to go. You've removed it. So we're going to create a new one next time around, and thus all the data will be reset. However, since we're using 3D actors in some spaces, like for example, right here, when we do this, this is a 3D actor that we're spawning in the scene. Well, sure, the widget goes away and resets, but he's still in the scene. So there are a few things we have to do. So, on pressed, go ahead and grab your main menu widget reference. Set visibility. Whoops. And make it visible. Okay. Then, I made a function called reset values to default. So, make a new function. When you make it, it'll automatically bring you inside of it. Go ahead and rename it. Reset values to default or whatever you want. And we're just going to do a quick thing to destroy the character widget reference actors if they exist. These character widget references are actually my 3D actors that get spawned in the scene during the character select screen. So your mannequin, my mutant, the vanguard, whatever, they all get spawned in the scene when the characters select them. So if player 1 has selected one and there's one in the scene, we're going to destroy it. Same with if player 2 has destroyed it. We only want to do this logic if it's valid. So bring on your 2 variables, and if you're not familiar with this part of the tutorial series and you'd like to be, I'll leave a link to the iCard where we did the 3D character select. But bring them onto the scene. You can right click on them and hit convert to validated get for both of these, and only if they're valid you drag off and destroy actor, just like this. Okay, and then you can see I also do something if it's not valid. I just go to the next one. Because player 1 can select without player 2 selecting, and player 2 can select without player 1 selecting. So both of these have to be checked. It's not just one or the other. Okay, and now that they are being destroyed, they'll be respawned when we go ahead and click a button next time around, so no big deal there. Now we're ready to remove our character select screen from the parent. You want to make sure you do this last, because if you remove it beforehand, then the logic won't continue to fire. Okay. So we're golden there. Now we have to do one more thing, where when we create the level select screen widget, we're going to do the same logic we did with the main menu and save a reference to the character select screen widget in the level select screen widget. So let's go to our level select screen widget. Go ahead and add a back button. If you want, go ahead and copy your back button from your character select. If you have it set up with values that you want, you can copy it and paste it in this view and have everything brought over. So this is the exact same as my character select was. Make sure you hit on pressed again so you can generate your on pressed value in your event graph for this button. So down here. So let's go ahead and make our character select widget reference. Make a new variable. See, I made it here. Click on the type, look for your character select screen. Mine's character select screen 1 right now. Grab an object reference to it. Again, we're not going to be setting it in here at all, so we were not worried about setting it in here. Go back to your character select screen. When we hit continue on this screen and go and open the level select screen, then we can drag off the return value, say set character select reference, and then drag in self. You'll get this right here. And then make sure you also go ahead and add the level select screen widget to the viewport. Now remember, we're also checking if stage select screen is up. Since we're applying things in the background with the character select screen still in mind, we want to make sure that we determine if we're changing the right values. So if stage select screen is up, remember we can't change our characters as we move along the boxes. That's good. But we're going to have to reset this when we go back from the stage select screen / level select screen to the character select screen. So we're going to reset that. Let's go into our level select screen. So I've made another function called reset values to default. Just go make a new function, go into it, and here are the things we're going to set. Now remember, for my level select screen, I have 3 different methods in play. So I have to reset 3 different things. You only have to reset one of these things if you're using one method, but I'm showing you how to reset all 3 of them. So if you're using the widget in the background for the videos or for an image, such as I do on Trail of the Wise or the Inferno map, like this, then all you have to do is set the visibility of it to hidden. So I grab it, it's an image, and I set the visibility to hidden. If you're displaying a 3D, or if you're displaying an image on a 3D actor in the scene, such as a plane, like I did in the stage select screen, then I grab my image preview, grab the static mesh component, set it to be invisible. New visibility false, meaning it's not visible. If you're using a render target, like you have your actual other scenes or other locations in your main menu loaded in, and you want to grab a view of it, grab your render target, grab the static mesh component, and set it to be invisible. Grab what your render target is outputting to. For me, it's a plane. Grab the static mesh component and set it to be invisible. New visibility equals false. Lastly, grab your character select reference that we set after we spawned the level select screen widget, and then make sure that we set the boolean back to false. Is stage select screen up? Because at this point, it no longer will be. Okay, that's what we're doing in reset values. Lastly, we have to remove the level select screen from the parent when the back button is pressed. That's how we can get rid of everything that we need to get rid of. So let's say we have the mutant and the vanguard. Whoops. And the vanguard. And I hit continue. Now I have this stuff up. Great. I have these things spawned. Okay, but when I hit back, I want to get rid of it. But I want to keep everything the character select screen widget has. So that's how that's working. You can see even the positions change and all that, since we don't remove the character select screen when we go from one screen to the other. Cool, so make sure you remove the level select screen from the parent when we hit the back button. And now let's fix an issue that the stage select screen has. It has an issue where if you were to remove it, it wouldn't actually reset the initial stage in the background. So what I mean by that is, say I select my characters, and I have this all good to go. This side scroller template, so my first level, would not pop up behind the characters if I removed from parent until I moved. So that looks kind of bad, right? It's a little janky. You want to make sure whatever stage you're on is being displayed. You don't want to have to click over to display it. That's not how it should be. So all I do is at the end of my construct function, I have this thing where I was looping through the actors I had in the scene for my render target and adding them to the stage camera array, and that's great. But I was actually just dragging this along until get all actors of class, which I shouldn't have been doing. I should be dragging from completed because I don't need to do any of this stuff on a loop. So on completed, drag to your plain blueprint, get all actors of class section, and then do your loop logic. But on the end of completed, this loop, you're going to call the move selection function with player 0 at direction 0. Since player 1 is the only one controlling the level select, what's popping up currently, we want to reset that to make sure that's always at the default value and that the current value is being displayed appropriately. And if you're not worried about this stuff, this is the 3D stage selection stuff. If you're not worried about this, all you need to do to fix the issue I mentioned earlier, though, is to call move selection with player index 0, direction 0, anywhere in your construct. That way, as soon as it pops up, it automatically triggers the initial stage to be displayed on the screen. It's just a little safeguard there I've added so that you don't get to your stage selection menu and nothing pops up in the background until the player moves. Again, it just looks a little ugly. It looks much better this way. Simple little fix, but I wanted to share it with you guys. And there, now we have some menu flow in here. It's a little janky right now because we're using the mouse and we don't have a way to control it with the keyboard, but we're going to be going over all that when we do the game pads, and I'll also cover doing all this with keyboards. So we're going to have a huge episode ahead of us, but we'll get all that sorted, and then you can actually have a fully functioning game where you can go from menu to the game mode you want, and then back out to the menu. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It helps me more than anything else you can do for the channel. I just really appreciate it. Lets me know I'm doing a good job. If you had any issues with this episode or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord. There's a link in the description, and we'll be able to help you out with any of the problems you had. Lastly, guys, if you want to come support the channel through memberships, I'll show you the options right here. It's basically like Patreon for YouTube if you're not familiar. But thank you guys so much for the support, and I've added some extra perks and tiers that you get for supporting the channel through memberships and Patreon. Your choice, whatever one you want to do if you decide to do it. But the perks are not going to lock anything that you guys already have access to. So if you already have access to it, like watching the tutorials and things like that, I'm not going to lock any videos behind that. Thanks again so much, guys, for allowing me to have that opportunity. for you guys to support the channel through memberships. Lastly, guys, if you want to come support us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Shawnthebro27. You can come check us out playing some Demons Souls. Very tricky game. Very tricky game. We're getting the hang of it. And you can help us try and survive some of the very deadly mini games in Resident Evil 7. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.